3 years, 1 marriage, 0 nights together until the millionaire reached for her hand. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and it is the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The rain had been tapping steadily against the wide windows of the Carter penthouse, a soft rhythm swallowed by the vast silence inside. For 3 years, Emily Carter had lived here as a wife, in name only. 3 years of shared meals eaten from opposite ends of a table that looked more like a polished runway. 3 years of polite nods, duty-driven appearances, and a thick sheet of emotional distance lying between her and the man she had married. Aiden Carter, the youngest millionaire on the East Coast to secure a board seat at his family's corporation, was a man carved from stone. Sharp suit lines, sharp words, and sharper boundaries. Boundaries he had written himself in the contract she had signed. No intimacy, no shared bedroom, no interference in personal matters. Appear at scheduled events. Maintain a united front. That was their arrangement. And she had accepted it, not because she wanted to, but because the hospital bill for her mother had arrived the same week her second job cut her hours. She had been drowning. Aiden had offered a lifeline wrapped in legal language. Tonight marked the final month of their 3-year agreement. 30 days before they would dissolve the marriage and walk away with clean hands, clean reputations, and clean separation. Emily stood in the dim hallway outside the guest room that had become her home inside his home. The clock in the living room clicked past 1:00 p.m. The storm rolled louder, thunder shuddering through the floor. She reached for the light switch, but the room suddenly cut to black. A power outage. The sudden darkness swallowed her whole, a suffocating reminder of a childhood fear she had never quite shaken. Her breath hitched trembling before she could stop it. The storm outside cracked again, filling the space with a violent boom. Emily pressed a hand to the wall, trying to ground herself. Her pulse raced. She tried to breathe evenly, but memories she had buried long ago crawled back up like shadows. She whispered to herself, "It is fine. It is fine. You are not a child anymore. It is just a storm. It is nothing." But her voice shook, and she hated how helpless it sounded. Footsteps approached from the dark hallway. Slow, measured, familiar. "Aiden," she whispered. A silhouette appeared tall and steady against the faint lightning seeping through the windows. He took a step closer, the sound of his shoes grounding the silence. "Emily," he said, his voice low, calm, in a way she was not used to hearing. She tried to straighten her posture to pretend she was fine. "I am okay," she said quickly. I just need a second." Lightning flashed again, lighting the space for a heartbeat. He saw her face. The fear she could not hide. The way she stood too close to the wall, hands trembling slightly. In 3 years she had never allowed herself to look vulnerable in front of him. In 3 years he had never let himself look closely enough to notice. Aiden hesitated. That itself was unusual. He was a man who prided himself on never hesitating. Then he moved closer. Close enough that she felt the warmth of his presence through the darkness. His hand lifted slowly, deliberately, as if he was breaking one of the rules he had written. "Emily," he said softly, "give me your hand." She froze. For 3 years they had kept an ocean of space between them. No touches, no accidental brushes of fingers, not even a shared handshake. But in the dark, during the storm that rattled the glass of his perfect penthouse, Aiden Carter reached for her hand, gently, almost carefully. Her breath caught. "Aiden," she whispered, "this is not part of the contract." His voice dropped rougher now. "I know." His fingertips brushed hers, hesitant yet intentional, like someone touching something precious for the first time. "Just take my hand," he said. "Please." Emily slowly lifted her trembling fingers, and when his hand closed around hers, warm, steady, firm, the distance of 3 long, cold years collapsed into a single electric moment. It was the first rule he had ever broken, and the first touch she had ever allowed. The storm outside thundered again, but inside something far more dangerous had begun to shift. Something she could not name, and something he could no longer deny. This was the moment everything changed, even if neither of them realized it yet. The storm passed by morning, but something in the Carter penthouse had changed. Emily felt it the moment she stepped out of her room. The air was different. Not warmer, but aware. Like the walls themselves remembered the way Aiden had held her hand. She moved quietly through the hallway, hoping to avoid awkwardness. The last thing she needed was for him to pretend it had never happened. Because the truth was, she still felt the imprint of his palm on hers. A strange warmth that refused to fade. When she reached the kitchen, she stopped. Aiden was already there. Not in his usual tailored suit, not with the cold CEO armor she had grown used to. He was dressed down in a simple gray shirt sleeves, rolled drinking coffee while reading through a stack of documents. Morning light softened the edges of his face. For a second he looked almost human, almost reachable. He glanced up. Their eyes met. Something flickered across his expression, a quiet recognition of last night. "Good morning," he said. He had said those words before many times, but it had never sounded like this. Not careful, not measured, not distant. It sounded real. "Good morning," Emily replied, trying to keep her voice steady. She moved toward the cabinet to get a glass, but her fingers trembled slightly. She hoped he did not notice. He did. Aiden set his coffee down. "Are you feeling better?" She stiffened. He was asking about the storm, about the darkness, about the panic she had tried so hard to hide. "Yes," she said quickly. "It was just a long night. I am fine now." Aiden studied her for a moment, not with judgment, with something closer to concern, though he seemed uncertain how to show it. "You should have called for me," he said. Her breath caught. "Called for you? Why would I do that?" He hesitated, an unusual pause for a man whose life revolved around sharp decisions. "Because you were afraid," he said quietly. The words hung between them. Emily's cheeks warmed. She stepped back, gripping the edge of the counter. "I do not want to trouble you, Aiden. The contract was very clear. We live our own lives." A shadow crossed his expression. Not anger, not irritation. Something like regret. He picked up the stack of documents, straightened them, then spoke without looking at her. "The contract does not say you have to suffer in silence." She opened her mouth, but no words formed. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, jaw tightening. "The board moved the quarterly review to tomorrow," he muttered. "They want us both there." As a united front, her heart sank a little. After everything that happened last night, reality snapped back like a rubber band. This was still a business arrangement. They still had roles to play. "I understand," she replied softly. She had attended dozens of these events. She knew exactly how the day would go. Perfect posture, polite smiles, empty conversations. Aiden stood gathering his things. "I will have the driver pick you up at 4, he said. His voice was back to calm professional tones. "It will be a long night. The investors expect us to stay for the dinner portion as well." She nodded. "Of course." He reached the doorway, then stopped. He looked back at her. A small silence stretched between them. Light from the window touched the edges of his face, and for the first time Emily noticed how tired he looked. Not physically tired, emotionally worn. "Emily," he said. Her name in his voice made her chest tighten. "If there is ever anything you need." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "You can tell me." Her breath trembled. She wanted to say something, "Thank you," or "I will," or "last night meant something," but nothing made it out. She simply nodded. Aiden gave a faint nod back, as if relieved she did not push further. Then he turned and left for the day. The door clicked behind him and the penthouse fell silent again. Emily exhaled slowly, pressing a hand against her chest. 3 years of distance. 3 years of coldness. 3 years of pretending. So why did it feel like one touch had shifted the entire foundation of their marriage? Why did the memory of his hand holding hers feel more real than anything they had shared in 3 years? And why? Why did she already fear what would happen the day the contract ended? Something had changed last night. And no matter how hard they tried to pretend otherwise, neither of them could step back across that line. The afternoon light slipped slowly across the living room floor, stretching long shadows across the marble. Emily sat at her vanity, trying to steady her hands while she fastened a pair of simple earrings. Tonight was the quarterly review dinner, another night of standing beside Aiden as the perfectly composed Mrs. Carter, even though the reality of their marriage was nothing like the role she played. She stared at her reflection for a moment. 3 years of this life, 3 years of wearing elegant dresses, 3 years of staying invisible next to a man who ruled boardrooms with a single glance. But today felt different. Last night had shifted something inside her, something she did not have the courage to name. At exactly 4 o'clock, a soft knock sounded on her door. Emily Aiden's voice. Calm, controlled, but underneath, there was an edge she had never heard before. It almost sounded unsure. She opened the door and found him standing there in a tailored black suit. Not unusual, but the way he looked at her was unusual. Like he was seeing her, not just acknowledging her presence. You look. He paused, searching for the right word. You look very nice. Her heart fluttered quiet and quick. Thank you, she said softly. They rode the elevator down together. The space felt too small, too quiet. Aiden stood beside her, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed ahead, but every few seconds he glanced her way, as if making sure she was still there, as if last night's vulnerability had carved a mark he could not ignore. When they stepped outside, the driver opened the door of the black sedan. Emily moved to slide in, but Aiden placed a hand lightly on her back, a gentle touch, a guiding touch. Something he had never done before. She stiffened, startled by the warmth of his hand through the thin fabric of her dress. He noticed her reaction and withdrew his hand slowly, his jaw tightening. Sorry, he murmured. She shook her head. It is fine, but her heartbeat said otherwise. The car pulled into the long circular driveway of the Carter Corporation building. Dozens of luxury cars lined the curb. Photographers lingered at a distance, waiting for high-profile arrivals. Aiden stepped out first and turned to help her out of the car. For 3 years he had let her get out on her own. Tonight he extended his hand. The gesture was small, but to Emily it felt monumental. She placed her hand in his, and he held it firmly as she stepped onto the pavement. For a moment neither moved. Then the camera shutters snapped, and Aiden loosened his grip just enough to stay appropriate, not enough to let go entirely. Inside the grand lobby, the usual swarm of executives and shareholders crowded around, eager to greet him. But as they approached, their eyes drifted to her with thin smiles and assessing gazes. Emily had grown used to it. The whispered comments, the rumors, the quiet judgment about how she was not fit to be a Carter. A woman in a sapphire dress stepped forward. Vivienne Locke, a senior investor and one of Aiden's harshest critics. Aiden, she greeted smoothly. Always a pleasure. And Emily. Her eyes swept over Emily's dress with a polite but cold smile. You are looking simple tonight. Emily felt her stomach tighten, but before she could respond, Aiden spoke fast, firm, and louder than necessary. She looks perfect. Vivian's eyebrows lifted slightly. Emily blinked, stunned. Aiden had never defended her before. He usually stayed silent, letting her handle comments on her own. Vivienne smiled tightly. Well, I suppose perfection is subjective. Then she walked away. Emily exhaled slowly, trying to regain her composure. Aiden turned to her. Are you all right? Yes, she breathed. I am fine. But he did not look convinced. For a moment he lingered, his eyes tracing hers as if trying to read deeper. Then he nodded and gestured toward the elevator. The board is waiting. Let us go. They walked together, step by step, side by side. To anyone watching, they looked like a united couple moving with perfect harmony. But Emily felt the truth thrumming beneath the surface. Aiden's quiet protectiveness, his uncharacteristic warmth, the way he kept glancing at her as if afraid she might slip away. 3 years of distance had not prepared her for this. For a husband who suddenly chose to stand beside her, not out of obligation but out of something far more complex. When the elevator doors slid open to the private boardroom floor, Emily stepped out first. Aiden followed her, his voice low enough for only her to hear. Stay close tonight, he murmured. I do not trust everyone in this room. A chill ran down her spine, not from fear, but from the quiet intensity in his voice. Something was happening. Something she could feel but not yet understand. And as the boardroom doors opened, Emily sensed one thing with absolute clarity. Tonight was not going to be just another corporate dinner. It was the beginning of something neither of them could control. The boardroom was already buzzing when Aiden and Emily stepped inside. Long glass walls reflected the city skyline, and a polished oak table stretched across the center like a stage. Executives in tailored suits turned their heads as the couple entered. Some nodded respectfully, others watched with thin smiles that did not reach their eyes. Emily stayed close beside Aiden just as he had asked. Her pulse quickened when she felt the subtle way he shifted his stance, angling his body protectively toward her. She was used to being an accessory in these rooms, a decorative figure, but tonight Aiden stood as though she mattered. They took their seats. Aiden's hand brushed her chair before he sat down. A small gesture, but it sent a strange warmth through her chest. The meeting began with financial updates and quarterly forecasts. Emily listened in silence. She never spoke in these gatherings. Her role had always been to smile and appear supportive. But she felt every stare, every judgmental glance. Vivienne Locke was the first to strike. She leaned forward, voice syrupy, sweet. Aiden, since we are discussing stability, perhaps we should address the public perception of your personal life. Investors prefer a stable family image, but there have been questions. Emily tensed. Vivienne continued, eyes glowing with false concern. For instance, I heard that you and Emily maintain separate bedrooms. That seems rather unconventional for a married couple. A wave of whispers rippled around the table. Emily felt the blood drain from her face. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the leather chair and never be seen again. Aiden's jaw tightened. He leaned forward, voice cold enough to cut marble. Our marriage is none of your concern, Vivienne. Vivienne smiled gently, tilting her head. It becomes our concern when it affects the company. Investors might wonder if the marriage is authentic. Emily's heart pounded, each beat louder than the last. In the past, Aiden would have ignored remarks like this, letting Emily defend herself. But not tonight. Aiden placed a hand on the table, fingers tense, voice firm and clear. My marriage is solid. My wife is here beside me. That is the only statement necessary. Emily's breath caught. The room grew still, but Vivienne was not finished. She reached for a folder, sliding photographs across the table. Pictures of Emily leaving the penthouse alone. Pictures of her grocery shopping without security. Pictures of her attending a charity class with friends. Harmless activities. But framed to look suspicious. Vivienne tapped the photos. Some might interpret this as distance or strain. Aiden's eyes darkened. Who paid for these photographs? Vivienne gave a soft laugh. Public streets are public information. Anyone could have taken them. Emily stared down at the pictures. She knew she had done nothing wrong. Yet shame crawled up her spine, uninvited and unfair. Suddenly, Aiden's chair scraped back. He stood, placing a firm hand on Emily's shoulder before facing the room. Emily is not required to parade herself for cameras, he said. She lives her own life, and I respect that. Any implication otherwise is an insult. The room froze. Executives shifted uncomfortably. Vivienne's confident smile faltered. Aiden looked down at Emily. Come with me, he murmured. He helped her stand, then guided her out of the boardroom, with a hand resting gently on her back. The door closed behind them, sealing the murmurs inside. They stepped into a quieter hallway lined with floor-to-ceiling windows. City lights shimmered across the glass, painting soft reflections on the floor. Emily exhaled shakily. I am sorry, she whispered. I did not mean to cause trouble. Aiden turned to her sharply. Do not apologize. You did nothing wrong. She looked down. It still caused a scene. I caused the scene, he corrected. Not you. Emily hesitated. Aiden, why did you defend me like that? He stared at her, silence stretching between them. For once, his expression held no mask, no shield of control. Because they crossed a line, he said quietly. And because last night... His voice softened. Last night showed me something I should have seen a long time ago. Emily's heart pounded painfully. Something delicate, fragile, and terrifying fluttered inside her. Before she could speak, a security guard approached. Mr. Carter, sorry to interrupt. There has been an incident in the parking area involving your car. You may want to see this. Aiden's expression hardened. What kind of incident? The guard hesitated. It appears someone vandalized it and left a message. Emily felt a chill crawl down her spine. Aiden placed a reassuring hand on her arm. Stay close, he said. They followed the guard toward the elevator. Whatever waited downstairs, Emily sensed it was not just an attack on Aiden. It was a warning, and the target was her. The elevator doors slid open to the underground parking level and a rush of cold air swept in. Emily felt Aiden move slightly in front of her, his posture tense, protective. The security guard led them down a quiet lane of polished concrete until they reached Aiden's black luxury sedan. Emily stopped short. The sleek exterior was slashed with streaks of white paint. Across the driver's door in uneven strokes someone had written, "She does not belong here." Her breath caught. The words felt like a punch to the ribs. Aiden's jaw tightened, the muscle along the side of his face flexing with restrained anger. He stepped closer to the car, examining the threat with a stillness that felt more dangerous than any outburst. Emily swallowed hard. "This is about me." Aiden turned immediately, his voice firm. "Do not take responsibility for someone else's cruelty." "But it is clearly directed at me," she whispered. His expression softened just slightly. "It is directed at us," he corrected, "and whoever did this will answer for it." Security began documenting the damage, snapping photos under the bright garage lights. Emily wrapped her arms around herself, shivering, even though the air was not cold. For years she had faced judgmental comments, whispers, quiet insults. But this was different. Someone had taken action. Someone wanted to hurt her, or wanted to shake Aiden through her. Aiden stepped closer and lowered his voice. "Emily, look at me." She lifted her eyes. He held her gaze with steady, unwavering intensity. "You are my wife," he said. "No one gets to threaten you." Her heart clenched unexpectedly at the conviction in his tone. It was not a line from their contract. It was not a performance for a boardroom. It was something else. Something real. The head of security approached Aiden with a tablet. "We checked the cameras. The person responsible wore a mask, but we saw them enter the garage right after the board meeting began." Emily tensed. "So they were here tonight," "Yes," the guard confirmed. "And they wrote the message in under 30 seconds before leaving through the east stairwell." Aiden's eyes narrowed. "Someone with clearance, then." The guard nodded slowly. Aiden exhaled, then placed a gentle hand on Emily's back. "We are done here. I am taking you home." She blinked. "What about the dinner?" He shook his head. "The board can wait. You cannot." The warmth of those words stunned her. They headed toward the private exit where another car waited. Inside the dim cabin, the city lights flickered across Aiden's face as the driver pulled away. Emily sat quietly, hands folded in her lap, still shaken by the message. Aiden watched her for a long moment before speaking. "Emily, you should know something," he said. "I will not allow this to happen again. Not to you." She hesitated. "You are taking this very personally." "Of course I am," he replied. She looked at him, really looked at him. Gone was the distant man she had married. Tonight she saw a version of Aiden that had been buried under years of restraint. Protective, intense, determined. "Aiden," she whispered, "why does this matter so much to you?" He leaned back slightly, his eyes steady on hers. "Because someone thinks they can scare you," he said. "And because someone thinks I will let them." Emily felt her breath catch at the quiet fierceness in his voice. For the rest of the ride neither spoke. But the silence was not cold like before. It was charged heavy, full of questions neither dared to voice. As the car approached the penthouse building, Emily looked out the window, trying to steady her racing thoughts. Someone had drawn a line in the concrete tonight. A cruel one. A personal one. And Aiden Carter had stepped across that line without hesitation. Not as a businessman, not as a husband by contract, but as a man who could no longer pretend he did not care. The car rolled to a stop beneath the warm canopy lights of the Carter building, but neither Aiden nor Emily moved right away. The quiet between them felt charged thick with unsaid truths. Finally, Aiden opened his door and stepped out. He walked around to her side and extended his hand, waiting. Emily hesitated for only a moment before placing her hand in his. His grip was steady, protective, a silent message she felt all the way to her chest. Inside the private elevator, the space was dim and still. Emily watched the lights climb as they ascended. Aiden kept glancing at her, his brows drawn slightly in worry, as if he was replaying every second of what had happened in the parking garage. When the doors opened, he ushered her into the penthouse with a gentleness she had never associated with him. As soon as the door closed behind them, Aiden turned fully toward her. "Emily," he said, "sit with me for a moment." She followed him to the living room. The city lights poured in through the tall windows, reflecting off the glass coffee table. Aiden sat across from her, elbows resting on his knees, hands loosely clasped. "I want to know exactly how you are feeling," he said. His tone was not commanding. It was quiet, careful. Emily looked down at her hands. "I am shaken, but not hurt," she said. It was just the message. The words were cruel. "You did not deserve that," he replied immediately. "None of it." She exhaled softly. "Aiden, this is the life you live. People watch every move you make. They judge everything. And I never really fit in." His eyes sharpened. "Do not say that." "But it is true," she whispered. "I have known it since the day I signed the contract. This world is not built for people like me." Aiden leaned forward. "Emily, the contract was business. It was cold. It was practical. But you are not." She blinked, startled by the emotion in his voice. He continued, voice low and steady. "You did not fit in because I kept you at a distance, because I told you not to get close, because I acted like this marriage was something we could live through without feeling anything." Emily's pulse quickened. "Aiden," she said softly, unsure where he was going. He took a deliberate breath. "I was wrong." The words stunned her into silence. Aiden stood and walked to the window, hands sliding into his pockets. The night skyline cast a faint glow across his shoulders. "When I saw that message on my car," he said, his voice deeper now, "I felt something I have not felt in years. Anger. Not the business kind. Not the strategic kind. Something personal." He turned back to her. "I hated that someone tried to hurt you." Emily felt her heartbeat drum in her ears. "You were angry because of me, yes," he said without hesitation. "Because it was about you." She swallowed, her chest tightening with a mix of fear and something dangerously close to hope. Aiden walked back toward her, stopping only a few feet away. "But there is something I think you should know," he said. Emily looked up at him, eyes wide. "For weeks now I have been noticing the way you move through this house," he said. "Quiet, careful, respectful. And for weeks I have been wondering why it bothered me that we lived like strangers." She felt her breath break softly. "Aiden." He looked down at the floor for a moment as if searching for courage, then back at her. "Last night when you were afraid, when I held your hand, it changed something in me. More than I wanted to admit." Her heart pounded so hard she thought he might hear it. He took a step closer. "Emily, I do not want to live this way anymore. Not with you." The room felt suddenly smaller, as if the air itself leaned in to listen. Emily stood slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are you saying?" Aiden met her eyes with a steady, vulnerable honesty she had never seen from him before. "I am saying that the distance between us was my choice," he said. "But I do not want that distance anymore." Her breath trembled. Before she could speak, before she could make sense of the rush of emotions swelling inside her, Aiden gently reached for her hand. She let him, their fingers intertwined with an ease that felt impossibly natural for two people who had lived like strangers for 3 years. "Emily," he said softly, "I think it is time we stop pretending." Her heart lifted, broke, mended, all at once. And for the first time since the day she signed their contract, Emily Carter allowed herself to hope. A knock at the penthouse door shattered the fragile stillness between them. Aiden's hand tightened instinctively around Emily's before he released it and stepped toward the entrance. Emily felt her pulse quicken. She already sensed something was wrong. Moments like this never came with good news in Aiden Carter's world. Aiden opened the door. 2 members of corporate security stood there, stiff and uneasy. "Mr. Carter," one of them said, "we have an update about the incident." Aiden's expression shifted, the warmth from earlier, replaced by the cool, sharp focus she had seen in boardrooms. "Speak." The guard glanced briefly at Emily before continuing. "We reviewed additional footage. The person who vandalized your car entered the building using an executive-level badge." Emily felt her stomach drop. Someone from inside the company. Someone with power. Aiden's voice hardened. "Whose badge?" The guard hesitated. "That is the issue, sir. The badge belongs to Vivienne Locke." Emily's breath caught. Vivienne. The same woman who had humiliated her in the boardroom. The same woman who had looked at her with ice-cold disdain. Aiden's jaw tightened, anger simmering beneath the surface. Emily stepped forward, voice soft but steady. "Aiden." If Vivienne did this, then she is doing it to get to you, not me." He turned to her sharply. "No, do not take the blame off her. She targeted you because she wanted to provoke me. She thinks you are the weakness she can exploit." Emily's chest tightened at his words. Not because of the insult, but because of the truth underneath it. She was a weakness now. Because he cared. The second guard spoke cautiously. "Mr. Carter, with your permission, we can move forward with pressing charges." Aiden did not respond immediately. He looked at Emily instead. For a moment she expected the ruthless CEO to emerge the version of him who crushed threats without hesitation. But what she saw in his eyes was something deeper, more conflicted. Emily touched his arm gently. "Aiden, if you escalate this, Vivienne will not stop. She will double down. She will drag your name and mine through every possible headline." His chest rose with a slow, controlled breath. "That does not justify what she did," he said. "No," Emily agreed quietly, "but damaging your career will only give her what she wants." Aiden looked away for a moment, fighting the instinct to strike back. She could see it in the tense set of his shoulders. He was not used to being told to stand down. Finally, he nodded to security. "Not yet," he said. "Continue your investigation, but do not make any formal moves until I decide the best course of action." The guards nodded and left. The door closed. Silence settled between them again, but this time it was heavy with tension and danger. Emily turned to him. "Aiden, she is not finished. You know that, right?" He stepped closer, his voice low, steady, and filled with a quiet resolve. "Then neither am I." Emily swallowed hard. For the first time she felt the storm that was coming. And she knew that whatever Vivienne planned next, it would strike directly at the fragile connection growing between her and Aiden. The next morning arrived heavy and gray, as if the sky itself sensed what was coming. Emily barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the message on the car, and Vivienne's cold smile behind it. Aiden was already dressed when she stepped into the living room. Dark suit. Focused eyes. A quiet storm under the surface. "We need to go," he said. "The board has called an emergency session." Emily froze. Because of the vandalism, Aiden shook his head. "No, because Vivienne filed a formal complaint." Emily's stomach twisted. "What did she accuse us of?" He hesitated, jaw tightening. "She is claiming our marriage is fraudulent, that it is a contract created to maintain my image for the board." Emily felt the blood drain from her face. If the board believed Vivienne, Aiden could lose his seat, lose the company, lose everything he had spent his life building. "Aiden," she whispered, "this is my fault." He stepped toward her immediately and took her hands. "Do not say that. Vivienne is doing this because she wants power, not because of you." "But if they investigate," Emily said, her voice trembling, "they will find the contract. They will find the separate rooms. They will find everything." Aiden held her gaze calm and unwavering. "Then I will give them something else to find." She blinked. "What do you mean, you will see?" He guided her to the car, keeping close to her side. All the way to the Carter headquarters, Aiden's phone buzzed non-stop with messages from executives, lawyers, and shareholders. But he ignored every call. When they arrived, security escorted them through a back entrance. The tension in the air was thick, buzzing like static. Emily's heart hammered as they approached the boardroom doors. Inside, the long table was filled. Vivienne sat near the center, dressed immaculately in navy blue, confidence radiating from her posture. "Aiden," she said with a thin smile. "Emily, how thoughtful of you to join us." Emily lowered her eyes, but Aiden did not flinch. "What is the purpose of this meeting?" he demanded. Vivienne clasped her hands together. "The purpose is very simple. The board deserves transparency. If your marriage is not legitimate, then your position on this board becomes questionable." Whispers rippled across the table. Emily felt her throat close. The contract. The separate bedrooms. 3 years of distance. Vivienne continued, her voice sweetened with poison. "And so I propose an internal review of your marital agreement. If you are truly a united family, then you will have nothing to hide." Emily's breath shook. This was it. This was how Vivienne would destroy him. Aiden stepped forward. "There will not be any review," he said firmly. Vivienne arched an eyebrow. "And why not?" Aiden lifted a thin folder from the table. "Because the contract no longer exists." Emily's head snapped toward him. What? Aiden opened the folder. Inside were the shredded remnants of their marriage agreement. Gasps echoed around the room. Vivian's face drained of color. "You destroyed it," she hissed. Aiden nodded, his voice steady and clear. "Yes, Emily and I will decide the terms of our marriage ourselves. Not through a contract, not through a board, and certainly not through you." He looked at Emily then openly, without hesitation, and reached for her hand in front of the entire room. Emily's breath caught as his fingers intertwined with hers. "This is my wife," he said, "not my business arrangement." The room erupted into whispers. Vivian's expression twisted with fury. "You cannot expect the board to believe this sudden affection," she snapped. Aiden held Emily's hand tighter. "You do not have to believe it," he said. "But it is the truth." Emily felt her heart tremble. The world around them faded. In that moment, there was only his hand in hers, and the truth he had chosen to speak aloud. For the first time in 3 years, Aiden Carter stepped fully to her side. Not because of obligation, not because of image, because he wanted to. The boardroom fell into stunned silence. Vivian's plans had unraveled in front of her, and for the first time she seemed genuinely rattled. She tried to regain control, lifting her chin sharply. "Even without the contract, there is still doubt about the authenticity of your marriage," she argued. "The board deserves proof." Aiden did not flinch. "You already have your proof," he said. "You saw what mattered the most." Vivian scoffed. "Holding her hand is hardly evidence." Aiden stepped closer to Emily, turning so the entire board could see them both clearly. His voice lowered, steady but powerful. "You want evidence. Here it is." He gently guided Emily forward, standing beside her with a certainty that left no room for misinterpretation. "She is my wife. Not because of a document, not because of an agreement, but because I choose her." Emily felt her breath tremble. Her heart hammered at the certainty in his voice, at the way he spoke about her. Not as an obligation, but as a decision he had made with full intention. Aiden continued, "If any member of this board believes I am unfit because I stand beside my wife, then they are free to vote on my position." The room stirred with murmurs. No one dared challenge him outright, not after what they had witnessed, not after the quiet conviction in his voice. Vivian's expression tightened. She realized she had lost. She gathered her papers with shaking hands and sank back into her chair, defeated. After a few tense moments, the meeting adjourned. Executives filtered out, whispering among themselves, but none approached them. When the last door closed behind them, Aiden turned to Emily. "It is over," he said softly. "She cannot hurt you anymore." Emily exhaled slowly, feeling a weight lift from her chest. But another feeling rose in its place, something warm, something unfamiliar, something she could no longer ignore. "Aiden," she said quietly, "you did not have to do all of that." "Yes," he replied. "I did." He stepped closer, his voice lowering, softer than she had ever heard it. "Emily, I meant every word I said in that room. I choose you." Her eyes burned with emotion. After 3 years of distance, 3 years of coldness, 3 years of pretending, this felt like sunlight breaking through after a long winter. Aiden reached slowly for her hand. "No more contracts," he said. "No more rules. If you want this, really want this, then I will spend every day proving it to you." Emily felt her heart open, trembling but sure. "I want this," she whispered. "I want us." Aiden exhaled a quiet breath of relief and leaned his forehead gently against hers. They stood like that for a long moment, two people who had lived as strangers now choosing to build something real. When they finally walked out of the boardroom hand in hand, the world outside felt different, lighter, warmer, filled with possibility. 3 years of silence had ended. 3 years of distance had melted. And for the first time since their wedding day, Emily Carter left the building beside a man who was no longer her husband by contract, but by choice and by love.